Have you ever hallucinated an entire conversation?
Oh, wow.
No, seriously. Like, you walk out of this really intense meeting, right? You let a few days pass, and then you finally sit down to type up the official notes.
Yeah.
And as you're typing, you just confidently insert this brilliant strategic pivot or argument that you vividly remember happening.
Right. Of course.
But then later, you go back and look at the Zoom transcript and you realize nobody actually said that. You only thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, it happens much more frequently than we'd probably like to admit.
It's terrifying.
It is, yeah. In cognitive psychology, it's actually tied to how our memory is reconstructive rather than, an exact recording. We piece things together. But in really high-stakes learning environments, or especially legal professions, this phenomenon actually has a very specific, very dangerous name.
Okay, what is it?
It's called transcript drift.
Transcript drift. I actually love that term. And that is exactly where we're starting today. So our mission in this deep dive is to perform a bit of digital forensics, basically.
Exactly.
We have our hands on a really fascinating source document. It's a file called _history.md. And it's basically a version control log, like a digital footprint that tracks the evolution of a single assignment written by a law student named Max.
Right, so we are tracking a single day of just like intense editing. This is June 11th, 2026. And Max is trying to finalize what's called the Module 5 Alternative Assignment.
Right.
This is for a class called CL660 Real Property I.
Okay.
And the core subject matter of the assignment, it's something called After Closing Remedies for Physical Defects. And this is all based on a seminar he attended a week prior on June 4th.
Okay, before we get into the actual forensics of his editing process, we really need to do a quick ELI 5, explain like I'm 5 on that legal topic.
Sure.
Just so we actually know what Max is supposed to be writing about. So what exactly is an after-closing remedy for a physical defect?
Okay, let's break it down into a real-world scenario.
Perfect.
Imagine you buy a house. You do the walkthrough. You sign the massive mountain of paperwork. You get the keys. It's the closing, right?
Well, the deal is done.
Exactly. But then 3 days later, it rains, and your entire basement floods because of a cracked foundation.
Ah, brutal.
Yeah, a total nightmare. So the core legal question Max is exploring is, do you, the buyer, have any legal recourse, like a remedy against the seller after the closing has already happened?
Ah, I see.
Or, are you simply stuck with a flooded basement because the papers are signed and the deal is done?
Got it. It's basically buyer's remorse, but with lawyers.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, actually.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Okay.
So Max has to write a 250 to 500-word reflection on this exact topic based on that June 4th seminar.
Right.
But when we look at the very first entry in this version log, the file that's just labeled existing document, it's a massive red flag.
Oh, huge.
The log explicitly states in bold that this draft does not match the transcript.
Yeah, it is entirely divorced from reality.
How bad is it?
Well, Max's existing draft focuses heavily on this really elaborate hypothetical about storm roof or roofing tiles, active concealment.
Oh.
And it also frames the entire legal issue around something called a fiduciary special relationship.
Wait, let's pause there again because I want to make sure I understand the magnitude of this mistake.
Yeah.
What do those terms even mean, and why is it so bad that he put them in this first draft?
Okay, so active concealment is when a seller doesn't just, keep quiet about a defect, but they actively hide it.
Like lying.
Worse than lying, like deliberately putting fresh paint over severe water damage on a storm roof just to fool an inspector.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right. And then a fiduciary special relationship implies this legally recognized very high level of trust. Think like the relationship between a lawyer and a client, or, a financial advisor and an investor. That level of trust almost never exists between a standard buyer and a seller in a real estate transaction.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually operating at arm's length, as we say.
So not only are these concepts highly, highly specific, but let me guess, they weren't even discussed in the June 4th seminar.
Exactly. None of it. Absolutely zero.
That is wild. It's like writing a really passionate, detailed review for a movie, but you're basing it purely on a trailer you watched 3 weeks ago rather than the film you just sat through.
Yeah.
You're praising scenes that were completely cut from the theatrical release. How does a student accidentally hallucinate an entire storm roof, active concealment hypothetical into their notes?
Well, this brings us right back to transcript drift. Right? And cognitive load.
Okay.
When you are absorbing incredibly dense, interconnected topics, which property law definitely is.
Yeah.
Your brain is just desperate to build bridges between concepts.
It wants to make connections.
Exactly. Max almost certainly read a case about a leaking storm roof in a different module, maybe module 2.
Right.
And perhaps a professor mentioned fiduciary duties during a totally separate lecture on, like, agency law.
And his brain just kind of stitched them together into this Frankenstein memory.
Precisely. Because he waited a week between the seminar and the actual writing session, his brain filled in the gaps with familiar, adjacent information.
Wow.
Yeah, if you don't anchor yourself to the actual transcript or the recording, your brain will confidently lie to you just to make a cohesive narrative.
That is so relatable. And this is exactly why the log notes that this existing document was left entirely untouched and was officially superseded.
Yes.
It was a dead end. The foundation was just phantom information. Which brings us to the first major pivot in the log. Enter version 2, or V2, on June 11th.
The search for the truth.
Right.
The log identifies V2 as the first transcript faithful draft, and it clocks in at 654 words.
So they finally went back to the tape. They transcribed what was actually said, ignoring all the phantom storm roofs, completely ditching the fiduciary relationships, and just focusing entirely on the reality of the June 4th seminar regarding those after-closing remedies.
Yeah, but, V2 is just raw material.
Okay.
It's accurate, sure, but it's not a finished product. It's the unrefined ore. Because immediately, the log shows a transition to V3, where this massive cleanup operation takes place.
Right. The log says the author removes all the administrative and meta commentary.
Exactly.
Let's actually look at what got cut in V3, because it's a very specific list of clutter.
Yeah, go ahead.
They removed notes about reading out of sync. They stripped out edition page numbers. They deleted references to 2021 handouts, and they completely scrubbed any mentions of resource quizzes.
So this phase of editing, it really targets the psychology of insecurity in writing.
Insecurity, how so?
Well, think about it. Why does an author include all that meta-commentary in the first place? It's
Yeah.
a defensive mechanism. By mentioning the 2021 handouts or, hyper-specific edition page numbers, the writer is subtly trying to signal to the professor, look how hard I studied. Look at the volume of materials I referenced.
Okay, I have to challenge you on this. Let me push back a bit.
Sure.
Because if I am an employee submitting a big research report to my boss, or, a student writing for a really demanding professor, isn't showing my work a good thing?
Uh-huh.
If I leave the grocery receipts in the document, like the edition numbers, the handouts, I'm proving my diligence, right? I'm demonstrating that I didn't just guess, I actually did the reading. Why is that considered a flaw that needs to be scrubbed?
That's a really, really common instinct.
Mm.
But it actually achieves the exact opposite of what you want.
Really?
Yeah. Diligence shouldn't be a separate thing you just bolt onto the side of your writing, right? It should be self-evident in the quality of your analysis.
That's so nice.
When you leave those grocery receipts in the text, you're treating the reader like an auditor of your process, rather than a consumer of your ideas.
So it's basically distracting. It just breaks the flow.
It's way more than distracting. It's a crutch. I mean, novice writers use meta-commentary as an apology for weak analysis.
Wow.
Yeah. If your argument about after-closing remedies is logically sound, it doesn't matter if you read the material out of sync.
Right, the argument stands on its own.
Exactly. By stripping away those crutches in V3, you forced the document to stand entirely on its substantive merits. And it's terrifying, honestly, because there's nowhere to hide. But it's a completely necessary step toward professional writing.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's like serving someone a beautifully plated steak, but leaving the grocery store receipt sitting right on top of the meat.
Yes,
The diner doesn't care what aisle you bought the salt in, They just want to know if the steak tastes good.
exactly. Remove the receipt. Let them taste the steak.
I love that. So now, with V3, we have a draft that is factually accurate to the transcript, and it's stripped of all that insecure meta-commentary. But the structure of the document is about to radically change. Which brings us to what I think is the most fascinating part of this whole process, the architecture of persuasion.
Oh, yeah.
In V4, the log notes a major shift in audience awareness.
The author introduces the second-person address.
Right. The log explicitly points out the new inclusion of phrases like, as you put it, and you framed. The author is no longer writing this abstract essay. They are speaking directly to the professor.
The log even justifies this choice. It says, since he reads the submission.
Yeah.
It seems like such a simple grammatical tweak, but it completely alters the psychological dynamic of the document. The assignment requires Max to answer the professor's specific pre-recording questions.
Right.
By using the second person, the text transforms from a passive recitation of facts into an active, direct dialogue. You are acknowledging the evaluator in the room.
It's a subtle power move, really. It shows situational awareness. But V4 was honestly just a warm-up for the heavy structural engineering that happens in V5.
Yeah, V5 is where the true architecture of the final assignment takes shape. The log indicates a shift to a bulleted outline format.
And this wasn't just some arbitrary creative choice either. The log notes that this format is per the prompt. Max is aligning the document with the professor's specific formatting requirements.
Right.
And to do this, he borrows heavily from a previous successful assignment, the Mod 4 reflection style.
Which is incredibly smart. In academic or corporate environments, consistency is a weapon.
Absolutely.
If a specific structural format yielded a good result in Module 4, you replicate it exactly in Module 5. You reduce the cognitive friction for your reader by just giving them a familiar layout.
And this layout is incredibly rigid. V5 utilizes 4 specific headers: main topics, subtopics, and subsequent discussion, points I found interesting, and finally, reflections and suggestions.
It's a highly functional container.
Yeah.
It really forces the writer to categorize their thoughts logically.
But wait, it goes even further. On top of those 4 headers, V5 formats the rules and key law as bullet points. It includes a numbered order of operations. It maintains the first-person perspective for the reflections, keeps the second-person direct address from V4, and honors the no meta rule from V3. Oh, and the log notes, it's all set in Century School Book 12-point font.
Ah, Century School Book.
Right.
It's a classic. It's a highly readable serif font designed for textbooks. It visually signals authority and serious legal analysis.
Yeah.
The medium is the message, and Century School Book says, take this document seriously.
So we have this highly organized, incredibly structured document. It sounds perfect. But there is a massive catch.
Yeah, there is.
The log shows that V5, with all these headers and bullets, ballooned to 722 words.
Yes. The structure kind of backfired, in a way.
I want to dig into this because I have a theory about it.
Let's hear it.
Doesn't adopting a highly rigid structure with all these distinct headers, subheaders, and bullet points, doesn't that actually cause you to overwrite? Think about it psychologically. If you build a giant wooden bookshelf with 4 specific labeled shelves, you suddenly feel this overwhelming urge to stuff every single shelf to the brim with books.
Right.
An empty shelf feels like a failure.
I wouldn't say the structure backfired so much as it provoked human nature.
Okay.
The psychological container theory is very real in writing. Formatting creates boundaries, and human beings just abhor an empty container.
Yeah.
If you have a bolded header titled Subtopics and Subsequent Discussion, you feel subconsciously compelled to provide multiple subtopics and a very lengthy discussion.
Right. You feel like you're shortchanging the header if you only write one sentence underneath it. You think, well, the professor gave me a whole bucket for reflections. I better pour a lot of reflection in there.
Precisely. The structure provides incredible clarity for the reader, but it provides a framework for endless expansion for the writer. Max likely felt that to do justice to the Mod 4 reflection style, he had to generate a certain volume of content in each of those 4 buckets. He put the key law into bullets, detailed the order of operations, addressed pre-recording questions.
And suddenly you have a 722-word document.
Exactly.
Which is a huge problem because it brings us to the final agonizing stage of this single-day sprint, version 6, the physics of editing.
Right, because the assignment prompt dictated a strict word count target. Between 250 and 500 words.
And V5 was sitting at 722. They were over the maximum limit by more than 200 words. They had to lose almost a third of the entire document.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy part. The log shows that V6, the final version, landed at approximately 427 words, safely inside the target.
Right.
What did they cut?
That's the most revealing detail in the entire log. They didn't amputate anything structural?
Exactly. Even though it was aggressively trimmed down to 427 words, V6 retained all the critical architecture from D5.
Yeah.
It kept all 4 headers. It kept the rules and key law as bullets. It maintained the second-person voice. It still answered the pre-recording questions. And it kept the no meta rule. The entire skeleton survived the surgery.
So how do you lose 300 words without losing a single bone in the skeleton?
How do you do it?
This requires a mechanism we call internal compression. It's not about deleting whole ideas. It's about altering the physics of the sentences themselves.
I love that. Internal compression. Break down exactly how that works, practically speaking. How do you compress a text that much?
Think of it like a chef boiling down a giant pot of stock to make a really rich demi-glace.
Okay.
You want to reduce the volume to intensify the flavor. You don't take the meat or the bones out of the pot, you just evaporate the water.
Right.
In writing, the water is usually passive voice, prepositional phrases, and just weak verbs.
Give me a concrete example. Let's make up a sentence Max might have written in V5 about those after-closing remedies and show how it gets compressed for V6.
Okay, here is a classic, bloated, 36-word student sentence.
Let's hear it.
It is very important to consider the fact that the buyer of the property may have a legal remedy available to them after the closing takes place if it turns out there is a physical defect.
Wow. That was exhausting to even listen to. It's full of water. It is very important to consider the fact that...
It's totally hollow filler.
Exactly. So how do we compress that for V6? We find the core action and the core subjects.
Okay.
The subjects are the buyer and the physical defect. The action is retaining a remedy. So we convert that 36-word paragraph into a 9-word bullet point.
Which is
Rule. Buyers retain after-closing remedies for physical defects.
36 words down to 9. The exact same legal concept, but with a fraction of the cognitive load for the reader.
That is the physics of editing. You hunt for the one perfect verb to replace a clumsy 5-word phrase.
You take the numbered order of operations and distill it to its absolute essence. It requires a fundamental reevaluation of every single word to ask, is this meat or is this water?
It's an incredibly disciplined process, and I want to pause here and ask you, the listener, to think about your own writing habits. Think about the last time you had to write a crucial email to your boss or a project postmortem, and you had a strict character limit.
Yeah.
The hardest part of writing is almost never figuring out what to say. It's the agonizing process of deciding what not to say. When you read a crisp, clear, 400-word document, it's easy to assume the author just sat down, typed it out in 20 minutes, and hit send.
It looks effortless because the effort has been hidden. A 427-word final draft is usually the result of a 1,000-word battle.
Right.
The constraint of the 250 to 500-word limit forced Max to decide what was truly legally essential regarding physical defects.
Yes.
The word count constraint wasn't a punishment, it was a diagnostic tool that forced clarity.
The constraint forces the diamond out of the rough. And looking at the very end of the version log, there's just a little bit of administrative housekeeping left before Max is done with June 11th.
The log labels these open items. There are 2 final steps: consolidating the document to a clean submission file name and archiving all the superseded drafts, pending Max's final approval.
Sweeping up the workshop after the furniture is built.
Exactly.
It's so vital because the professor will only ever see that clean submission file name. They will never know about the 722-word bloated outline. They will never see the distracting grocery receipts about the 2021 handouts, and they will certainly never know about the phantom storm roof hypothetical.
They just get the polished Century Schoolbook masterpiece. The version log is a private journal, but the submission is a public performance. And those 2 things must be kept entirely separate.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into _history.md, let's synthesize the journey we've been on. We started with a factually hallucinated, formatting-heavy, fundamentally flawed existing file. It was a victim of transcript drift and misplaced priorities.
But from that chaotic starting point, we witnessed a rigorous, highly logical, iterative process. Max found the baseline factual truth in V2 by returning to the tape.
Right.
He stripped away his own insecurities by removing the meta-commentary in V3. He established a direct, persuasive connection with his audience in V4.
He built a robust, highly organized structural container in V5.
Yes. And finally, he executed a ruthless precision compression to hit the word count constraints in V6.
It really is a masterclass in the unglamorous, often frustrating, but completely necessary mechanics of editing. It proves that writing isn't just typing, it's a process of reduction.
It absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back at the entire trajectory of this document, it leaves me with one final, slightly provocative thought to ponder.
Oh, I love a good provocative thought. Lay it on us.
Consider that very first entirely discarded draft.
Okay. The one with the storm roof active concealment hypothetical and the fiduciary special relationship.
The hallucination. The one that was officially superseded and completely erased for being historically inaccurate.
Exactly. It was entirely scrubbed from the final submission. But this raises a profound question. Did exploring that entirely wrong path actually help Max better understand the true boundaries of after-closing remedies?
Oh, wow.
Right. By writing down the wrong hypothetical and then forcing himself to confront why it was wrong when he reviewed the transcript, did he solidify his grasp on the correct rule?
So the mistake wasn't just a waste of time. The detour was actually a diagnostic tool.
Exactly. How often do our erased mistakes, the chaotic drafts we quickly hide in the archive, quietly build the invisible foundation of our final, polished successes?
That is a phenomenal question, and it's something for all of you to chew on the next time you write an email, realize it's completely wrong, highlight the whole paragraph, and hit the delete key. Remember, just because it's gone from the final page doesn't mean it didn't help you find your way to the finish line.